These are all the extremes of the ball as you see them coming down right here. I kind of broke down, and I'm going to give you a link to this so you can sort of follow along here, trying to make sure that your graphs are showing some of the same similar ideas. But like, remember I told you about the Y curve? It's the one that's most identical to what you're seeing in terms of like stuff like this, right? So you can see the Y curve is doing something like this, and then this is the forward motion, and it just so happens to be that X is the forward motion. It could be Z, it could be X, depending on where you orient the rig. But you can see that it's moving at a pretty constant speed, and the curve is fairly clean. It's a progressive, very predictable type of curve. And then you can see that as it gets here, the curve becomes flatter. That means the spacing is more clustered, and it's starting to slow down here until it finally comes to a stop when this is completely flat. On here, would be the rotation. So the rotation would continue to rotate and rotate. Now we don't have to worry about the 360 degrees anymore. All we have to do is make it look proper. So we have to eyeball that rotation until it finally comes to a stop. So it gradually comes to a stop. Now if you really blow this part up, you notice sometimes that when a ball starts to roll and comes to a stop, it almost kind of reverses a little bit at the end and kind of gives you that little extra realism thing, where the ball would come to a stop and then slightly come back and rotate a little bit. Yeah, we'll talk about what this does, because we're going to introduce this whole idea of the form slant when the thing's rotating, and I'll show you what that means. The same thing, right? But here we have this sense of the ball squashing and stretching in different ways. So when it stretches over here, that angle changes here. But you're familiar with this, the whole squash and stretch part, where this is the stretch and squash. But notice that the stretch and squash is diminishing as well. It has that same kind of pattern that we had with the ball bounce recovery, where that same kind of sloping curve comes down, where this, at some point, the ball is not going to squash and stretch anymore. You're just going to see a complete sphere bouncing along with no more squash and stretch. It would look kind of weird at the very end to have all this squash and stretch when the ball's barely coming off the ground. So that doesn't make any sense, right? So all these, you know, like before I was saying, this might look like the San Francisco Bridge, but now it's starting to look more like a heartbeat in a way, and the heartbeat's getting less and less. So you can think of it sort of as a heart, boom, 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 the heartbeat. And you notice that the timing of it, right? The timing is that those contact points is that they're also getting smaller and smaller. So they have to match what's happening with those contact points.